No public comment. I'm going to move on to approval of minutes. I move to approve the minutes of the Thursday, May 5th, 2022 special meeting of the Board of Selectmen.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, motion passes. I move to approve the minutes of the Monday, May 9th, regular meeting of the Board of Selectmen.
I'll second.
In terms of discussion, under approval of minutes, because it was not unanimous, for the motion seconded by Nino Pass, voting in favor of Gorski and Annino, abstained was Young. Any other changes?
Yeah, I just had a minor one. On page 5, under Selectmen's comments, Annino, it says the railing in the front of the building has been repaired. It should be, in front of the building is on the list to be repaired.
Okay.
Under, did you get all that?
Mm-hmm.
Under Beechwood, we also talked about, and I remember raising specifically questions about a model ordinance, the makeup of the committee. This is under B, Beechwood, I'm sorry, on page 5, to get that.
Yep.
So I asked specifically that we look at model ordinances, the proposed makeup of the committee, the roles of the committee and members, the legal impact and risk on the town, and any cost to the town. Also, with respect to D, when we talked about the Economic Recovery Committee recommendations, I think it came later, but we did talk about there was a question, open question, about what line item they would go on, because we didn't put them in a line item in the budget and we didn't want them in a line item in the budget, so that will probably be an open question that we need to address with the ARPA funds and the line item. So I think that's an action item that we need to address.
Not everything will be a line item because they're
Right.
not all town related.
Right.
So Gina has,
I have something to say about that.
she'll discuss.
Yeah, so I just want for the record to say that there's an open action item there about placement, where it needs to go, just to keep the record clear on that. Thank you. So I think we're all thinking on the same lines, so thank you.
Can you point out where that is?
Like where it says Regular expressed concerned about the proper reporting of these transactions and asked for time to research it. Is it in there? You want to add
Specifically that there was an open action item. Regolo
What
expressed
page are you on?
concerns.
Page 5.
Page 5 under D. At some point during the meeting, I know I asked the question about where it would be placed, line item. I know Gina spoke up as well, but it's an open action item that the board needs to address. So I just want to make sure that it's
Okay.
kept open in the minutes going forward.
Okay.
Thank you.
Moving forward, all those in favor of the minutes as amended, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We have no refunds and abatements. We do have an appointment. I move to appoint Karen Milano to the Parmelee Farm Steering Committee. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Have both political committees reported back on whether or not they have appointees?
I did get this from Scott Hawkins, the chair of Parmelee. So that's where that came from.
But there's a 30-day requirement, I think it's 30 days within the charter.
this was prior to, this was just before our last meeting, so it probably would have only been 15 days.
Then I would like to wait until that time is expired and we get reports from both committees.
Okay? Little table,
So no second.
yeah, there'll be no second, the motion will fail for the lack of a second.
I think there was a second.
There was a
I
second.
seconded
Oh, okay. Oh, you did,
Okay.
so that we could discuss it.
Okay.
Okay, so
I
now,
think we're choosing to table it, or we could withdraw the motion.
let's table it because it's something that's gonna come up again.
Okay.
Okay.
Department reports, Public Works, Walt came to me this week to think about updating the contracted driver rates. While it may be premature until we better know where gas prices are going in the winter months, it's something that we need to think about. If he increases the rates, what he's looking to do is increase the rates, what was budgeted,
From 145 per hour to
145 to 160. That was the large truck plow sander and operator. From the truck plow sander and operator, that was at 90 to 95, and the pickup truck plow and operator to 80. Based on last year's, we would be looking at a dollar increase of about 11 grand. But he would prefer to do this in lieu of giving them gas, because they could get themselves in trouble if we have them gas up and they're caught with their tanks with untaxed gas. So this is one thing that he's considering. I think it's just, let's wait and see what the summer brings, and then we can bring this back up again in the fall.
Can you bring it up at the next CCM meeting to see what other towns are doing?
Yes, I do know right around here, Haddam, Clinton, Durham, and Guilford, they hire additional people. We're one of the few that contracts out our drivers. So we're a little bit different, but I can certainly ask CCM what they think.
When you say they hire them as part-time employees?
They hire them as employees.
Full-time employees
Correct.
with benefits for the whole year?
For the most part, yes. These are people that come in.
And what do they do when it's not snowing?
Well, they use their town crew, so think about it that way. They have a larger, we only have 4 people on
Right.
our town crew, so we don't have, we just don't have the resources.
So I don't know that that's an option for us, right?
To hire?
Okay. Yeah, no,
The
Don't
only,
forget we hire equipment too.
right.
Yeah.
Rental, yeah.
well,
rental.
and that's why we're paying, Walt's considering going to 160 for, say, Running Brook and Trim Side, where they bring in their resources plus their equipment, and then we pay them that stipend.
But we don't have that extra 11,000 or more built into the budget, so we don't
No,
have
we
room for that.
ran flat for snow, so that would be an exposure for us.
What do you mean we ran flat?
We left snow flat for
The budget.
the budget for.
Right, but snow is,
Always
somewhat of a placeholder. I think I'd be more concerned if we were getting this now if it was some other part of the budget, but that snow budget is weather dependent, and there's always been some flexibility in that.
Thank you.
All right. The only other thing that I have to report, Walt expects to be over on trees. We're already at 90% of the tree budget, and there's a couple of trees that just have to get taken down, so 'tis the season.
Who's our tree warden?
We have Bruce Fagan as our tree warden.
You know, it would be interesting to have him come when we ever have a meeting that's not overextended, if that ever happens, maybe in the fall, to give us an update. We've had a lot of diseased trees from the moths and over the last few years, and the impact is probably being seen. So it might be, I'm sure, just future.
Probably, yeah, in the fall after, because right now they're taking down trees too.
Yep.
Budget report, Gina, anything? Other than, I just mentioned the tree budget.
I think I said this at our last meeting, I think that we're
we're looking pretty good for this year. A lot of it has to do with higher than expected revenue, so.
In gross numbers, what are we, what kind of a surplus are we running? Really, that much?
Yeah, well, we got a good chunk of FEMA money that wasn't anticipated. So
Okay. If we took the FEMA money out,
half that amount, probably.
okay, all right.
All right, moving forward, we have a through town event, the Killingworth Road Race. That's here, actually, I didn't bring a motion, but I move to approve the application for the use of state highways for special events to the Congregational Church of Killingworth, Saturday, August 6th, 8:30 a.m.
I second that.
Do we actually have an application?
Yeah.
Okay. That was
The page before
oh,
that.
Okay,
It's a real application.
there we go.
We
Thank you.
actually apply for them.
Yeah, I
That's
wasn't
what-
I wasn't
that's
making
what
that
threw me.
familiar.
All right.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, I was falling down on my job because I didn't write that one down. All right, the Coordinated Medical Emergency Directions, CMED, under the provisions of the State of Connecticut Regulations 2874A and B, every municipality is eligible for regional telecommunications service credit for Coordinated Medical Emergency Direction, CMED services. Last year, the town designated Valley Shore. ECC is the recipient. The 22-23 credit for Killingworth is $1,851.90. I move that the BOS authorize me to sign the DESPP Coordinated Medical Emergency Direction CMED designation form, assigning Valley Shore Emergency Communications as recipient of the Regional Emergency Telecommunications Service credit.
I second it.
Oh.
That's fine.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
See, that's why I do this ahead of time.
Wanted to make sure you didn't need oxygen over there.
Could you just repeat that again?
Oh, yeah. Just for kicks and giggles. Part-time building inspector, we talked about this before, due to the large volume of building permits. I'd like to move to appoint Richard Plinus as a part-time building inspector for a term up to 180 days, not to exceed 8 hours per week.
I'll second.
Discussion.
Along with this, I would like to suggest that we have routine reports so that we can see that the backlog of work is being affected
Mhm.
by this additional cost to the town.
Yep.
And that we can, we can make appropriate adjustments.
Yeah.
as those reports.
Absolutely, and Richard, he's uniquely situated, he's on his way back from Clinton, he's in town, he can pick up the building permits in the evening and do the work, so I think this is a good fit for the town. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, is that new business or old business? Okay. I move to add.
Oh, wait, no, it's gonna be one.
Oh, okay, let's keep on. Okay, old business. Killingworth's affordable housing plan. We have a number of individuals here from the Affordable Housing Committee, and they've actually given us a plan. This plan needs to be adopted not later than 6/1/2022, and then submitted to OPM and posted on the OPM website. These plans may be coordinated with or included as part of your plan of conservation development if the timing is appropriate. We do need to post this on our website. I will say that the plan that will be presented tonight has been endorsed by P&Z, but we need to talk about introductions.
If anyone wants to come in here, then.
I think it's
You're hiding.
all one thing.
Oh, it's all one, you brought one copy of the whole group.
And we have our RiverCog representative as well. All right, Tom.
Hi. Good evening, I'm Tom Huberty, a member of the Alternative Housing Committee. We're here tonight simply to present the plan that the committee, in cooperation with Riverfront, has been working on for a year or more. It's been a long time. Today I sent out the annex, the appendices to the email, the appendices to all three of you. So what we have here tonight with us is a copy of the plan and a copy of the appendices. There's been some discussion following P&Z's endorsement about the language in the beginning of the plan. And Selectmen Annino proposed some language, which we have a copy of that here tonight. And as far as we're concerned, that can be substituted for the current language that's there. It could be added to the language that's there. We also have some language that the staff at Rivercog developed. We could add that or not add that. We're just giving you the plan and do what you want with it. We're done. We are finished with it.
Okay,
All right, so let me move the motion and then we can have discussion.
I would prefer that we maybe have some quote Q&A first, no?
That's fine,
Is that okay?
that's fine.
My first question is why wasn't the appendices included as part of the draft reports that were circulated? So we're really seeing these, or I'm seeing them for the first time tonight, and we're being asked to adopt this tonight.
So the information that was in the appendices, as it's used for the analysis portion, is included in the draft plan that you saw. You're right that the full version of all of the data wasn't included in that initial copy, and that was just because it was still being finalized in format. But the data was what was presented at the town's informational presentation where we sought public feedback. So it's not technically the first time because it was presented.
Oh, it is technically the first time.
The first time you're seeing it in that format, yes. Correct, yes.
Okay, I'm speaking for myself, but I'm very uncomfortable endorsing a document that I haven't had the opportunity to read through all of the data.
Understood.
So that I think it's gonna be a problem for me. The next question, and I would like to clarify a couple of things. The Planning and Zoning Commission endorsed the document conditionally, and it was conditionally on adding some language to this document, which apparently wasn't done. And I hear what's being said. What you're saying is, here's the document as it sits. You, the Board of Selectmen, can take it and you can adopt it however you feel comfortable. Is that?
Yeah, great. And just for your information, I did bring a copy of the minutes from P&Z with the motion endorsing the plan.
Yeah, the only in so much as that it's an advisory only document. That was the conditional provision.
Correct. And that is, in fact, the use of the document is advisory only, and we're perfectly comfortable if you said we adopt this on the condition that this text, which I have a copy of right here, is inserted, and that's the text from your email, instead of the text that's there, and we would just swap it out, no problem.
So what text is this?
It's the same from your email.
Yeah, this is your email.
I just copied it onto a Word document.
Okay.
And I did listen to the meeting on Friday. There was, at this point, you folks were ready to send this to us
Yes.
as is. I spoke with Tom this morning. And I was there when you did present the appendices, so, this data was gathered as part of the process in putting together the document.
But this is the first time we've seen it in its entirety, right?
Understood.
And you guys
yeah.
have been working on this for over a year, is that right? Oh,
Yes, right.
blood, sweat, and tears. It's hard coming to us, and I read through it when you guys did the presentation several months ago. I wasn't able to participate because we had other special meetings going on, so I wasn't able to participate, but I did read through, and I think Tom, you and I may have had email exchange
Yeah,
briefly
we
with
did.
that.
Yeah, we did.
My question is a little more specific, and I don't have the statute in front of me or what the call was that we received to do this. If there's a state requirement, Public Act 17-170, is that it, that required us to publish this by June 1st, is that
It's-
right?
The statute is CGS 830J, and yes, it requires that all of the municipalities in Connecticut adopt an affordable housing plan that explains how that municipality intends to increase its supply of affordable housing, and it's to be updated every 5 years and adopted by June 1st.
So what you said a few minutes ago about providing us information, that's what you've done, but we have to put up a plan that the town is going to be bound by, is that correct?
Not correct, no.
Okay.
It's advisory only. So nothing in this plan is implemented without additional steps. And the recommendations that we workshopped that were put into the plan are really recommendations for further study or further consideration. They're not any hard line, you must do X, Y, or Z. They're more, consider this recommendation, study this opportunity, and even to do those things would require additional steps. And there's no penalty for not doing them. There's no slap on the wrist or anything coming from the state if anything that's put in here isn't actually done.
So what happens if on June 1st we don't have a plan?
Technically nothing. What you're supposed to do if you don't have an adopted plan is send a letter to the state explaining why and when you will have a plan adopted. But again, there's no penalty for not having one. And what we at RiverCog did, we were able to find funding from our operating budget to assist the towns. And so the RiverCog board, which is all of the first selectmen, decided that that would be a great opportunity for us to try and coordinate this effort among all of the towns that didn't yet have a plan done. So that's what we've been trying to do, is work with each of our towns. We're working with 12 as part of this process to get plans adopted and submitted for June 1st.
What happens once these plans are adopted by the towns at the RiverCog level?
So what RiverCog is doing, I mean, nothing has to happen with them, but what RiverCog is doing is started with a regional analysis of data, and that sort of, it was the same data set that ended up being parsed out into the initial town plans. It was just kind of a zoomed out lens to see how each of the towns were interworking together. And then what we're doing now, after each of the town plans are adopted, is looking at the recommendations and seeing where towns can coordinate and kind of, join resources. Because a lot of what we're hearing from the towns is, we need a point person to focus just on housing. And where are we going to get the funding for that? And how are we going to afford it? Do we have room, in our existing staff for someone to take this on? And so if 15 towns say that that's something that they need, then maybe that's something in our regional recommendations that would say, hey, towns, let's all work together and get one point person that can kind of be the information sharer. But again, these are all just recommendations. And so we're looking at coordinating across what everyone is looking to do and see if we can find ways to share resources and save costs and coordinate efforts. But If the towns don't want to do that, then there's no mandate. Obviously, it would go to the RiverCog board, and we would talk to each of the first selectmen of the towns and see if that was something they would be interested in. If they're not, the recommendation goes poof. So it's really all based on consensus.
Well, everything that's in this plan, it has to be codified, most of this, and it has to interact with our plan of conservation and development. So we're not gonna be able to move forward until planning and zoning can codify some of this into what they're doing. And I know you were at that meeting. I did listen into that meeting with planning and zoning.
Yeah, and my primary concern about this plan, I provided a lot of feedback, written feedback, but my primary concern is that some of the things that you've explained here, that I've heard the committee explain in the past, is not written in the document, and that's why I was suggesting that that be clarified in the introduction. It speaks to our plan of conservation and development. It speaks to our zoning regulations, and it speaks to this document, pointing out that it is simply an advisory document and does not provide justification for doing what these recommendations are suggesting until that is done. The reason why it's so important to all of us here in Killingworth is that our zoning is based on soil-based zoning. And the recommendations in here, I believe, erode that underpinning of our soil-based zoning. And so I'm not saying we can't do it. I'm saying if we do it, it needs to be our planning and zoning folks that are evaluating this so that we protect basically our water supply here. And so while it may seem like a noble idea to add high-density housing, it's going to seem like an awful short-sighted move if all of a sudden we've got to bring in municipal water supply because we've done something to upset that. And so that's why the language was so important to me. And it also, I added the language that specifically addressed the requirement so that it steps right through. Why are we doing this? And then what did we do? And then point out the importance of it being codified and adopted by planning and zoning.
To tag on to that, I think your points are extraordinarily integral to what we're doing here tonight. And two of the action items are number 3 and number 4. Review the appropriateness of soil-based zoning and revise as needed, and review and revise zoning to allow non-buildable land to count toward minimum acreage. And the verbiage here goes against what the town has done exactly to what you were just describing. And this is the delicate nature and the tension of trying to find a way to provide more affordable housing, which we desperately need, but also maintain, as you said, the ground supply and things. Kudos to the hard work of the folks that have been on our planning and zoning that developed these and have maintained and worked hard and not been always appreciated by builders in town and buyers in town when they've had to say no to construction, but it's maintained the integrity of the soil so our wells work, right? So this language makes me nervous, and I realize it's only recommendations, but they are action steps, and it opens the door. So I'm assuming that's what you're talking about, are these 2 action steps right here.
Yeah,
Is that right?
and I think I'm more comfortable, and where I was coming from is, I'm more comfortable with these being in there, because you're saying, hey, you really need to take a look at these. Is there room for adjustment?
Right.
And to that end, I'm saying, okay, but it needs to be done by our planning and zoning folks, and it needs to be incorporated into our plan of conservation and development. This document, as it was written, did not make that specifically clear, and that's why I'm asking for this language to be added. In fact, I'd like to read it into the record if I could.
Yeah, well,
Jamie, what page is that you just referenced?
Page 14.
Page 14, numbers 3 and 4. This is the
That's what today's document.
yeah. And he's going to read into record what I just handed down, if that helps you, Elizabeth.
So just to clarify, I'm gonna read the introduction now, how it's, as it's written now. It says, "The town of Killingworth has developed this affordable housing plan, which identifies strategies to grow the number of affordable housing units over the next 5 years in manners that align with the community values. This plan is intended to satisfy the statutory requirements under CGS Section 8-30J. Affordable housing plans must be updated every 5 years per state statute." That's what it says. It sounds like it's saying this needs to be done. What I'm suggesting it be changed to say is the town of Killingworth, under the state of Connecticut's mandate as required under state statute CGS Section 8-30J, is required to have in place an affordable housing plan with renewable requirements at 5-year intervals. To meet this requirement, the town of Killingworth's Board of Selectmen appointed an affordable housing committee on, I have insert date, I don't recall the date, whose purpose was to review these requirements and to propose recommendations for meeting this obligation by publishing a strategy plan for adoption by the town by the mandated June 1st, 2022 deadline. It is important to recognize that this document is advisory only, and none of the proposed strategies will take effect unless steps are taken by the town planners, planning and zoning, to implement them, including incorporating into Killingworth Plan of Conservation and Development, as well as then codifying as part of the town's zoning and subdivision regulations. In summary, this document is intended as an initial step to guide further investigation and dialogue by decision makers and the public.
I second it.
It wasn't a motion.
It wasn't a motion.
All right, so I'll make a motion to put it.
But
Oh, hang on.
my
But I
point
do
is,
think-
it was a bit of a mouthful, but I wanted it to be clear why we were doing this and what are the next steps. Because I'm, and it's somebody who spent, better than 20 years as a planner in this town. A document like this can potentially be taken by fancy professional engineers like me or counselors or developers and say, you said in this document this was okay. I want to make sure that this document doesn't say that, so that it always defaults back to our plan of conservation and development and regulations. With this, I'm more comfortable. I still am uncomfortable not having read the appendices, but I'm more comfortable with this being included.
Well, I was gonna say then, I move to adopt the advisory document as amended with the revised introduction read into the minutes by Lou Annino. Town of Killingworth Affordable Housing Plan Annex, as endorsed by Killingworth's Planning and Zoning on May 17th, 2022.
I second.
Any further discussion?
Yeah.
I just want to be clear that it replaces the introduction in its entirety.
So can I just ask who among you, there's a lot of you here, who among you were on the housing committee? Can you just identify yourselves for me? Can you just tell me who you are, your names? Because I can't.
Annie Sterna.
Was there somebody behind you that was on the board? Or on the group? Okay.
I'm Dennis Yakich.
And you too. So there's 4 of you here. Thank you so much for taking the time. It's a year is a long time to be working on something this intense. And I know from the first set of documents that I looked at, it was clear to me that you put a lot of effort and a lot of time at gathering information with the river cogs, pulling data together, teasing it apart, thinking about how, there's a lot of restrictions in the town and how to work around that to be true to what the request was. So thank you for the time, for dedicating, for volunteering your time to participate and to work through this. Not an easy thing when you're working against people who have that sort of NIMBY, not in my backyard approach, because we need affordable housing, and we see even what used to be considered affordable in town is no longer affordable. That's probably another topic we have tonight. And so finding an avenue to make it happen without destroying the, what we've talked about earlier, really noble cause. So thank you for your effort, and I'm sure we're going to be relying on your work for years to come in trying to find a way to help create more affordable housing. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for sure. The one thing I will say, there's still another set of minutes you guys have to sort through.
The
And-
minutes from this past Friday's
Friday.
meeting, yeah.
And then we can work out the details of discharging this commission and perhaps reenacting one going forward, so. Anyways, we have the motion on the table.
I would also like to, in spite of my strong feelings about the language that I'd like to see added to this document, I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge all of the hard work that you've done. I recognize that, and I appreciate all of what you've done. And I appreciate the fact that you're giving my language consideration for adding it to the document. I think it only strengthens your hard work.
I agree.
I agree, thank you.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you. I did read that, or I did listen to that meeting, that was good. All right, next order of business is the KVFC KAA Service Recognition Plan. So, Gina, in terms of the plan itself, I know we spoke with Linda Urson. She has started her review. She has provided us some feedback on what needs to be changed. And we were able to, Gina was able to convert the PDF document from, well, the PDF into a Word document. This is the second part of this work. It starts with this Killingworth Volunteer Fire Company Defined Benefit Pension Plan. She lists out her proposed changes, what she's retaining, and what's in that draft plan that we can strike out. So that is work in progress. But I did reach out to Dave Tighe and asked him to redline an ordinance for us because we do need this stipend to be enacted for July 1, because we put that in our budget for July 1. So my goal tonight was to move to enact this ordinance as redlined and then send it to town meeting for approval.
Do we have another meeting before that? We
Well, we got, no, this is a 30-day window. So when the problem is, once we enact an ordinance, I believe this would end up being on the town meeting for June 23rd, and we don't have another meeting for June 15th. Now, you can read it tonight and we could call a special meeting.
I haven't had a chance to read it, so
Yeah, let's do a special meeting.
I'm good with that.
So can I ask, did either of the attorneys provide letters with explanation? Because you said that you created documents. Did they provide letters, or was it just discussion you said from the woman that I forget her name, I'm sorry.
Linda Urson.
Linda Urson, okay.
Now, she provided this document that talks about the changes as well to the plan document.
But with no cover letter?
There was an email.
An email.
On top of it.
I can send you the email.
Thank you.
It essentially summarizes what she's put in there.
Yeah, so that would just be helpful to have.
All right, when can we have a special meeting?
So this is the black line version of this document?
No, this is our red line.
Commentary, this one?
That's her commentary.
So this is this should be in there too.
What was missing is that cover email.
The reason you have two sets of that is because we stuck a color one in after the fact. That's why you have two, the red line version.
But this is the black line cleaned up version of this, is that correct?
Yeah, it's just a black copy of the
Yeah.
same exact
Okay.
document.
Yeah, but this is the changes that Dave made to this for the stipend. Now, and keep in mind, on the stipend, it's not an either or. You have to you first take any of your stipend and pay it against any taxes, even if you own a car, and then you receive the balance. So we can't, from a budgetary standpoint, I wanted this particular ordinance to be written such that we're not fluctuating year to year with somebody saying, oh, I no longer want to take an abatement, I want to take a cash payout.
Yeah.
So, that's the way this is written.
Okay.
That's not big ties, that's the,
That's the other one.
Nancy,
Yeah, so
I
probably
might
would be helpful.
just,
Thank you.
and you may all understand this already, but the thing that has the timing pressure right now is just the ordinance, just the stipend. The plan changes don't go to town meeting, so they don't have, the letter and the changes from Linda Urson don't have to be done at the special meeting. It's a
Correct.
work in progress, so her final changes, you might wanna wait and look at that, but the thing to focus on right now is just the change in the ordinance.
Yes, because the plan itself is gonna have to go to the trustees for review. The two of those individuals plus myself, and, are you a trustee or just?
No.
I am. So the three of us have to review those changes before we can bring them to the Board of Selectmen. What's your availability this week for a special meeting? You knew that was coming.
Yeah.
I can do Wednesday night, I think. Wednesday night or
Can we do Wednesday at 4, or is that too early?
I can't, I'm in Hartford. This is the site.
Okay, so we're doing Wednesday at 7?
Yeah, I could, yep.
Yeah. All right, that'll
So
be
we do it
remote?
in person or remote?
No, we'll do that remote.
Oh, even better. And will we get copies of both the email and
Yes.
the lawyer's report?
Well, this is the lawyer's report.
But
That's
it's
all.
special meeting.
This report.
Oh, yeah, I can get that to you.
Well, we can talk about this, but the thing we need to vote on is the red
This
language,
is,
right?
this is gonna
Is
be
the
the
what-
only thing
So
for the
thank you
special
for that.
Yeah.
Take some of the heat
This
off.
is-
Okay, so
Yeah,
this is
so
the
this-
special meeting only,
There
okay.
could be
This
a
is
bunch
for
of
getting
changes to
this
what the lawyer
ordinance
said,
done.
so
But we can send you what the
it's
lawyer
obviously
said.
you can look at it if
I
you
mean,
want,
the
but it's
second
not
one,
final.
because it's.
Yeah.
I mean, this is what the lawyer
Yeah,
said.
'cause
She
when I
Some of
looked
the
at it,
comments are a little
It's
off.
still the
Yeah,
same.
when I looked at it, yeah, I didn't follow some of it, so,
Yeah.
yeah.
But
this is just
okay.
about
But the
This one's
codification should be
Correct.
much clearer.
This
Although
is,
we haven't.
this will be the ordinance.
We don't know yet.
And
yeah.
you haven't seen
lawyer
it?
stuff
The
is not
codification part
Correct.
now.
It should be in
Just
the
like-
minutes to the meeting.
So 7
Right, when the
o'clock, I'll
meeting's
set up the
put up,
remote
all the
meeting,
attachments
so
are
we're
supposed to
good.
be
In
associated
there,
with
so
the
what?
meeting. I don't know if they are, but there's
No.
probably, Elizabeth's really good.
All right, so we have a meeting for that. And we have Beechwood, our Fair Rent Commission, and I thank all of our members from Beechwood who are here. So Christine sent this out earlier today. And she sent it to all of us, well, not that early. This- About 5 o'clock she sent this to us. She did say, the CT Council of Municipalities are researching the questions raised. A report is forthcoming on the following: a model and most recent fair rent commission ordinances, model representation on the commission, survey of cost to municipalities broken out by retainer attorney, fee-based attorney, and support staff involvement. So this is supposed to be coming forward. I was hoping that we could move to approve the establishment of the Killingworth Fair Rent Commission so that we could at least then start gathering this information, but,
I believe that this, I know this was in direct response to the point that Jamie brought up about the minutes of the last meeting. These were the items, and Christine had volunteered to gather that data for us, so I think it's important that we get that as soon as we can, so that we can move this process forward, but I don't want to do it blindly.
all right, I do know this is important. All of you people, you need this, definitely. We just need to make sure that we get the steps right. I did speak with Melanie Janis. She established a fair rent commission in Clinton, and she worked with Christine. And she's going to be speaking with me on Thursday. She just had hip replacement surgery. So she's a little loopy. She's got the brain fog going on with medication, and Jamie can attest to that. But I did speak with her, and I hope to be able to have some more time with her on Thursday. But please know, we're doing what we can to move this forward as quickly as we can.
You have good advocate in us, but in particularly in Christine Goupil. She's working with cost and CCM and getting survey information, trying to do a lot of the groundwork that we would have to pay somebody to do here. So we're lucky to have her. So I don't know who brought her in and spoke with her, but you activated a really good advocate on your behalf.
So what does this mean? You gotta still point.
What does what mean?
I mean, this information that you need, is it delayed? Will we still be able to go through in June? What does this mean?
This will likely mean that we'll send this to, we get this, say, in the next 2 weeks. Our next meeting is June 13th.
Right.
If June 13th we have everything lined up, we're able to send an ordinance, it would mean I'd have to work with the town attorney to draft that ordinance, have it here presented, and then, you know the drill, we just talked about enacting this ordinance for the fire department. Once we enact the ordinance, it's 30 days to town meeting. So we're looking at a July or potentially August start.
Do we have to do anything with the Charter Revision Commission?
We may have to add at some point a fair rent commission in there if that's what is established. But by ordinance, what's not in the charter is in effect by ordinance, so that's the difference.
Okay.
But I know it's important to you guys. I know you want this as soon as possible. People do want to be able to come to the commission. The other thing we need to focus on is who's going to sit on that commission. How do they make the right decisions for you? What background do they need in order to be successful, for you to be successful with any appeals that you may have? So we've got to make sure we do this right.
You know, I give this an awful lot of thought, and I recognize that there's a program out there that's been endorsed by the state, and Christine's working on trying to come up with the structure and the cost and the legal responsibilities, and I get all of that. But there's a part of me that wonders, do we really need any of that? Why is it that why couldn't we as a board say, you know what, we're going to appoint a committee to investigate this with the backdrop that we're pursuing this, but the initial piece of it could be that we're just gonna start investigating what's happening at Beechwood. I don't know why we couldn't do that. And maybe that's enough, but it wouldn't have to have, all of this,
Well, it's codified. The problem is the Fair Rent Commission becomes state statute and codified.
It is codified, and I understand that, and we can always use that as the backdrop. But why couldn't we just say, hey, here we are, we're the leaders of the town of Killingworth. This committee, whoever it is, and I'm not implying we're the leaders, I'm implying we're the leaders of the town of Killingworth. We want to speak to you because what's happening there is a problem for us. And, if you don't want to talk to us directly, then we may have to go another route, but we'd like to avoid that if we can. I'm wondering if we couldn't start that dialogue now.
Well, we are starting, at least from a dialogue perspective. I do meet with Beechwood, the Beechwood residents. I think my next meeting with them is June 8th, although I know you would like to see Mike Beckich, our assessor, that day. So I'm wondering if we could switch it to perhaps June 9th.
But Nancy, that's all on our side of the fence.
Well,
I'm talking about,
With Sun Community. So are you suggesting that
So
the board,
which-
are you suggesting that the Board of Selectmen meet with Sun
be the Board of
Community?
Selectmen, we
to
could
invite
decide
them.
if we wanna, appoint a committee that's maybe made up of selectmen or selected town officials, or maybe members of the community, maybe all.
So I think that makes sense, but if we end up going, here's my legal hat. If we end up going with a fair rent commission, we could be, it could affect our
It could be
ability to
overstepping our
judge.
bounds.
Yeah, but it could actually disqualify us from, because we've already participated with the discussion, so we wouldn't be then objective. We wouldn't be viewed as objective by a court later on, right? If it ever came down to a decision.
But
So
the
I
state
think.
passed it, the
Excuse me?
state, the governor signed it.
No, what we're talking about is if we meet with the Sun community as the Board of Selectmen or as officials informally, which is I think the way things have always been done here, and it's always worked. This is things, if we move towards the Fair Rent Commission, if we started having conversations before, it could disqualify the town possibly. I mean, there's legal questions here about if I just think it could disqualify us. So I think we just have to think long and hard. I don't know. It's worth talking to the attorney about. I think it is worth talking to the town attorney, who probably knows more, or the CCM attorney on this, because they've dealt with these matters and they can advise us what other towns have done in this instance. That might be the way to do it.
Well, we have met with Rafi Podolsky,
Yep.
Podolsky, and he's with the Connecticut.
Legal Defense Fund.
Yeah, and so he's given us some of that background. So it's interesting here that she said a report is forthcoming. My concern is, when is this report forthcoming?
Mine as well, which is why I'm trying to prime the pump here.
Yeah, I mean, we could be waiting all summer for a report and we don't have a fair rent commission established. What you said, Bill, is correct. The Fair Rent Commission has been voted by the governor for municipalities greater
Right.
than 25,000.
Right.
So we're not at the 25,000 level, which is why we have to move to enact this. I would love to have, I'm gonna speak with Melanie on Thursday. She is very familiar with the situation that they had in Clinton with the manufactured home parks that were there. So that may be something that once I get more information, if you want to reach out to her as well, I can send you her email. At least we can get things moving. I think that's the key. And I think that's what you're trying to do.
It is.
Without getting into the way of legalese.
Yeah, without creating an obstacle for us later on, which is what I worry about. Donna, I think her name is Hamsley, who's in planning and development at CCM. She's the one that's working on this. So it might be, I don't know if you can make a call to her, because you're up to date with all the details, but she's the one drafting the plan and collecting all the information. So instead of waiting for the plan to come out, maybe a call to her proactively to say, what can we do here? This is what we're doing. Can we proactively, do you see any issues? And that might be because she's the one that's collecting all the data and getting the report ready. That might be the one to ask if we can do what you're suggesting.
Yeah, I can check out, and I certainly, I did send I looked up the Fair Rent Commission that's in Clinton, the ordinance that they put in place. It's pretty standard language, to be honest with you. I do think it's important for us to understand the representation on the commission and the survey of costs, and I totally get that. But I'm wondering if one thing we can at least get started on is to allow me to work with town council to start drafting an ordinance.
I'm okay with that.
I'm okay with that.
Yep, so I'll move that you work proactively on developing a possible ordinance, draft ordinance for the creation of the Fair Rent Commission.
Because what that gives us is the ability, I'll second.
Thank you.
Sorry. I'm so used to saying I do.
All right, so recommend
to draft.
to work with the attorney to draft to draft a draft.
Well, just to draft the ordinance.
Yeah, to draft a potential ordinance to create a fair rent commission.
I
We
can
also
think-
need to probably do a working group on.
Get ahead of ourselves.
Yeah, well, it's
I think
gonna
let's-
take a while.
Yeah, so at least let's start working on the ordinance, because the ordinance is, I find out, that takes time. And then from the ordinance to town meeting, that's another 30 days, so it's a process, so.
If I may, please, Rafi, the attorney, he said small towns like this would have 5 people appointed, and how other towns did this of this size, they would appoint 5 members, and it was the selectmen who would appoint 5 members, 2 who were renters, 2, who rented, 2 landlords, and then someone else, stuff like that. Of course, someone from Beechwood, since it would be brought, people from Beechwood would bring something right up, we would have to abstain. We wouldn't be on the board. So, and we could, if you'd be interested, we could get him and he could sit down and talk to you guys.
And I think I gave you guys the information from Rafi. It was a trifold. I think I sent it to you the last time, but I can resend it to you.
It wouldn't have to be voted, the selectmen gets to pick.
All right, we have a motion on the table.
You seconded.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Great, thank you.
Was there other questions?
I have just a question, if I may. You're talking about Clinton and their fair rent committee. The manufactured parks down there, aren't those, there's some communities too.
No,
No, I don't
they're
think
not.
they are.
They're Bay Shore, most of them.
Isn't that a sub?
We don't
No,
have
it's
that.
nothing to do with
It's-
Sun.
Cause all
It's
the
Westbrook.
signage
Westbrook
and the
has them.
road,
No,
Westbrook
ours
does
are in
have some, and
Westbrook.
so
The
does
Sun
Sidbrook.
communities are in Westbrook.
oh, okay.
Not in
well,
Flint.
all right,
Not
all right. Well, even so, couldn't they see how Clinton did theirs?
Well, that's what they're
That's what
doing.
we're
That's what
do.
we're gonna do.
Oh, okay, but I didn't know, if that was gonna be the process after, or if that's where you wanted to go forward now.
No, and your point is well taken. So Sun is in Westbrook. What I'd like to see are, yeah, I'd like to see minutes of these meetings to see, what information they gathered, how they went through
Yeah,
their
their
process.
process, yeah.
I already called them.
Okay.
I have a question, Jamie, for you, since we're talking about the legal, not having a issue of you guys going to some communities and then causing problems later on for the fair rent.
No, bringing in the owners of some community to try to work it
Whatever,
out.
I know,
Yeah.
I get what you're saying, really, I get it.
Yeah.
So my question is, does that stand, and this is just a legal kind of thing, if let's say, concerned town residents who aren't town officials sit down with some community and have a
Yeah.
discussion?
Not a problem.
That's,
As long
okay.
as you're not, so I'm not giving a legal opinion.
No, I
Okay,
understand. No,
I gotta be
I
really
don't-
careful, but as lawyers
I
too,
just
but,
wanna get an
but yeah,
idea of
from
where we
a,
stand,
yeah,
and
from a
maybe we
legal
can.
perspective, it's only, so the only reason why it would be a problem if town officials did it is because the Fair Rent Commission will be a town
Right, no, I
commission,
totally get that, I
And
just
so,
wanted
yeah,
to.
and we
because
have to.
I
what
think
we
we'll have a
may-
better idea if
What
they
we
wanna
may be
be
able
on
to
the
do, and
commission
Nancy and I
later.
Yeah,
talked
right,
about this
good point.
before, because I said, can I sit down with them? Can I get some other people in town who are concerned about this situation with the people that we think are so important to us? Can we sit down with them?
I don't think that you can do that. I'm speaking for myself. I would be uncomfortable if you were doing that on behalf of the town.
Well, I wouldn't
But
be
if
on
you're
behalf of them.
concerned citizens, you're just being good neighbors.
Yeah.
Right, well, and
And I think
that's why I'm asking the
That,
question.
that what would play out is exactly what I was trying to play
Right.
out
Right,
here,
exactly.
but it's a little softer. I think it's actually a better approach.
But
I
do
think-
know it would disqualify you probably
From-
from
I
serving
don't,
on
and that's fine, and you know what,
Okay.
honestly, that's not even the place I wanna go.
Okay.
even in the future. I think that I'm.
Well, I
going-
don't know that it would disqualify you, but it
But
could
I
become
would-
an issue if,
right.
and there's gonna be, so once the Fair Rent Commission gets involved and makes a determination,
Right, and then you step out.
90% chance there's gonna be litigation
Right,
afterwards, right?
absolutely.
So you don't wanna, when you set up, that's why, I know it feels painful, the time it takes to do it, but we need to do it right and get the right people on, because what will happen is some communities got a lot of money,
Yep.
and they will have lots of attorneys and access to them, and they will look at everything we did, setting up the commission, who was involved. They will
Right.
scrutinize it,
Yeah,
and they
for
will
a whole-
tie
Yep.
folks up in court, and that will cost a fortune to the taxpayers, but also to you guys. And meanwhile, nothing changes, right, while they tie you up in court. So that's why it feels painful and slow, but if we do it right and we set the foundation, it'll be a good program that will make a difference and hopefully make an impact the way that we want it to,
Right,
right?
and I think that
We're
all
good
of
with
them
that.
we're looking at is some of these issues like, I don't know, pets.
Mhm.
You know, some of those things that are not really gonna show up in a fair rent commission because they're not really about the money.
Yeah.
They're more about the
Community.
living
Right.
situation.
Community
Might
living.
actually be better addressed by maybe 3 or 4 of us who go and sit down with your whoever's there, and I don't know, just a thought, as you were talking, see, I'm with you, and I understand where you're coming from, and I think the Fair Rent Commission's super important, but a lot of the issues that are going on there are not necessarily anything that are ever gonna fall under that.
So I appreciate the dialogue, and unfortunately, this is,
I apologize.
I know, you know, this is the type of dialogue we
Right.
do in public comment, and, you know, for those of you who've never been to a selectmen's meeting, that's just the process that we have to follow. But what you're going through is heartfelt, and we're trying to do what we can get done.
What you just said, that there is specific processes and procedures to get it in place so that it's gonna have proper leverage, because some community, the sensing obviously we're all getting is a corporate agency that's just out to make money. So, and being that they have the money, they've gone through, I'm sure, this over and over in all the different places that they have this housing, so they're very savvy on this. So I would not want to see a step
Missed.
skipped or a shortcut where then you've got to backtrack, because they're probably already ahead of the game. And so whatever the way this comes together, the better legal leverage and solid leverage that we have that established on a firm foundation is going to give us a better position to plea and debate with them, or
To move forward, to actually have your voices be heard. So, thank you everyone for coming. Absolutely, thank you. All right, I'm gonna move on. Multi-factor authentication, and if that's not gripping.
There we go.
all right, I gotta remember that one. Long-term memory base. Julie and
So Gina sent the CGS Master Services Agreement for the town of Killingworth under separate email after our last meeting. They do provide network services and software to the town. Both CCS, Gina and I agree that MSA is in need of an update, and we're gonna work on that. But you also asked how this would work. So anyone with a town email will have 3 ways to authenticate, and the 2 of you included. You could either install an app on your phone, you can get a token, which would then send you back a number, or you could have a callback number, so they can call you back. So that's the way this will roll out. We've talked to the employees briefly.
Right.
Anything else that you wanna move on?
No, I was
this?
just gonna recap to say that we talked about this preliminarily at the last selectmen's meeting. We're talking about an expense of about $6,500. It's policy procedures as well as actually the implementation of this token system. It's pretty much this state of the world right now. Even if we choose not to apply for the cyber security insurance, it's really the direction that we need to go in. we right now have one means to authenticate ourselves, which is to put in our password. This is to add a second level. So you're either gonna have your cell phone, or you're gonna have this token, which looks like a little fob that you put on your key. And it has a digital readout that has a number on it that changes every maybe 15 seconds or so. So once you do the login traditionally, then you'll get prompted to put in this, other password. People who already are using their cell phones have the option to continue to use their cell phones. CT Comp is committed to working with the staff during the transition to make it as easy as possible. You're gonna have to expect that as they work through the process, they might find some behaviors that currently put us at risk, and they're gonna look for workarounds as best they can, but there might be some things that we have to change in terms of how we operate, but it's just the way things are. And I would like to suggest that if we move forward, that we do have money in the operating budget this year. I confirmed that we have time to do it this year, so,
So I move we do it.
Yeah, I guess.
I'll second.
Okay.
All right.
All those,
Aye.
done.
Can I, related to that, the cybersecurity, I'm very concerned about, and I laughed for a minute because you said something about behavior. In doing some research on cybersecurity, because this is something we talked about back in, I want to say it was December or November. It was early when I first started. We talked about cybersecurity. I don't think we have a minute to lose in getting, and I know this is a step toward it.
right.
CCM also offers cybersecurity. I don't know the cost. Insurance.
They don't actually offer the insurance,
Through CERCLA
they
or
recommend another.
yeah, through
Yeah.
CIRMA or
Yeah.
CERCLA or something. I think we should look into it right away.
Well, we
There was a
can't even
first,
apply without this in place.
well, this is good, getting in place, we just
Yeah.
proved it, so
Yeah.
that'll be in place, and now but to get a second price, if you're, because you're gonna go
I
through this
think
company,
CT
but also.
Comp, could make, I think they don't have any skin in the game, but there is another company, I believe, that they are aware of, but it is not cheap.
Oh, I know, but I just, I've heard of several towns in Connecticut that have gotten ransomware.
Right.
One was a first selectman who used, I believe, his phone or his computer, opened something he shouldn't have,
That's the greatest exposure
Right.
of these emails.
got ransomware and did something through his own finances to try to remove finances around to pay for it, because he didn't want people to know that he made, and it just, then they came back a
Snowballed.
second time and it gave private information, and they got his private information and did something there too. It's just, it's out there, it's happening, and our town is, if we have to deal with ransomware, we're gonna be in trouble, so it's something that I would like to, if we can get, and Gina, I know this is work on your part, or I don't know if it's Nancy or you, but to get the prices from, I know the CCM offers, you're talking about the company that we're working with and a third company, maybe to get prices right away on that, to see, even if it's a temporary holdover until we get what you want, but I don't wanna put it off.
The challenge is not so much the cost of the insurance as much as the deductible. Some of these, I think,
Yeah, I think that, yeah,
so
you're paying
Tom
a
was
lot.
saying something about, you're paying for the insurance and then you're paying a $50,000 deductible when something,
But in any case, even a
Happens.
$50,000 deductible is better than a $500,000 ransomware, if we have to get all your financial information back, right? And all of our stuff is becoming more and more electronic, so it is what it is, but, I would really like to see that on our next.
Yeah, one of the things I said in the beginning when, a year ago when this came up and it was not as much of a crisis, this world has been changing very quickly, but, is that, we don't have the same exposure because we're not a school. It's not like we're holding all that data about the kids. We don't have that, and it's also not that they can have access to the money that we have in the bank. They could get their records relating to the money that we have in the bank, but, so we're a little bit of a smaller fish.
Now,
look into it.
smaller fish now.
Right. All right.
Thank you, Gina.
Moving on. Neighborhood Assistance Act. We have two applications, the Killingworth Library and Pathfinders. You haven't heard from anyone else, have you, Elizabeth?
No.
So these have to be enacted by public, we gotta take them to public hearing, before July 1. So I move to take the Neighborhood Assistance Act applications for the Killingworth Library and Pathfinders to public hearing. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? I have one question. Can we do a public meeting and a public hearing at the same time?
What do you mean?
So in other words,
So, last time we did it like at 6:30 before the selectmen's
oh,
meeting.
okay, we could do a public hearing that way, okay.
And you want to back with another one?
Well, we're gonna have to do a public meeting for the ordinance once we got started, so that's why I
Is
wasn't
it
sure.
a town meeting or a public? Meeting?
That's gonna be a town meeting for the ordinance, so.
I don't see why we couldn't piggyback either one, either
Okay.
of the selectmen's meeting.
I just, yeah, thinking about process, trying to minimize
What
the
date are
amount.
we looking at for that? I'm thinking the June 13th, the first June meeting, whatever that is.
Yeah, I don't, for a public hearing, do we have to have how many weeks of public, legal notice?
It's not as set in stone as a town meeting, so I think if we add between 5 and 15 days.
Okay, so maybe, we'll do it at 6:30 on June 13th before our regular meeting for the Board of Selectmen, that we've got the
And I
time to
can
do
do
that.
it. Legal notice right away.
Okay,
Okay.
all those in favor say aye?
Just add that date to
Aye.
your
Aye.
motion.
Oh,
Yeah.
for friendly amendment, I move to take the Neighborhood Assistant Act application for the Killingworth Library and Pathfinder to public hearing June 13th.
I probably cannot be here on that date. In fact, I'm sure I won't be here on that date. I won't be able to participate. Just so you
Okay.
know.
That's fine. Gina, approval dispersal process for ARPA funds?
Yes, I was asked by the Board of Selectmen at your last meeting to consider the funding requested to develop a process by which these funds would be dispersed. I have a memo and I have a sample exhibit. I'd be happy to distribute it and we can talk about it tonight, or we can talk about it another night, or I can read it to you tonight. And we can take it up on, at another meeting, but it wouldn't take me long to file through.
File through.
All right, let me just hand this out first. So, as I said, the Board of Selectmen asked me to consider the ARPA funding request and to develop a process by which the funds are to be dispersed. I think we need to expect a high degree of scrutiny, both by the federal government and the members of the community. So I think it's vital that these expenditures are appropriate, that the records are clear, accurate, and accessible. In March of 2022, we met our first federal reporting obligation. Killingworth formally elected the flat standard allowance option, which allows all non-entitlement units, and we are a non-entitlement unit, to spend the ARPA funds for general governmental services, and I say that in quotation marks, with few exceptions, including debt service and pension plan payments. There are a few others, but by selecting this option, we dramatically streamline our reporting requirements to the U.S. Treasury. Municipalities receiving under $10 million in grant funding were strongly encouraged to make this election. So we're not bound to the designated uses of the ARPA funds. The Economic Recovery Committee has embraced the overall spirit of the act and has recommended various projects that fall outside of our general governmental services. So we've got some challenges there. Right now, as I've mentioned before, the ARPA funds are segregated in a separate bank account. I consulted with our exiting auditor and our new auditor as of just the other day. Both independently recommended that we establish a separate company in the accounting system, which I've done, and that we pay or transfer the funds only after the projects have been approved and the actual expenditures have been incurred. That's more of a note to myself, but that's it. It's important. Both the U.S. Treasury and OPM have encouraged municipalities to follow their normal process for authorizing projects and making expenditures. So I strongly recommend that we follow this recommendation and follow our normal bidding regulations, presenting the proposed expenditures or projects for consideration and approval at a town meeting. They recommend against funding any request that creates an ongoing financial obligation or increased tax burden on residents. And ultimately, we're responsible for how the funds are used. So this presents a particular challenge when we cut a check to an outside agency, someone who we don't ordinarily provide support to. So in that case, we have 3 right now that are in the table, the Crier, the Ambulance Association, and the Shoreline Soup Kitchen and Pantries, which is in Essex. in cases like these, in addition to receiving town meeting approval, I'm suggesting that they submit a narrative describing the need. Perhaps this already exists, maybe the economic recovery already has this. I think we already have one for, Nancy and I actually have one for the soup kitchen. Along with copies of the paid invoices showing that they've incurred the expense. Because again, we might be asked to prove that the money that we gave was used in the fashion that they said it was gonna be used. So in the case of, let's say for the ambulance, it might not be financially feasible for them to pay the bill and then have us reimburse them. So in that case, I would say we should ask for a purchase order validating their commitment to pay, and then a copy of a paid invoice once it was. So I have just a couple of notes about reporting. I will provide a monthly report to the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance. It will look very much like the report that you get on the capital expenditures each month. I've got drafts here that I'll share with you. And I'll be able to generate detailed expense reports, assuming I get the details from the, yes, that's what I will be able to do. I'll continue to make the annual reporting through the treasury through the portal. I think we don't have till next April to do the next one. And what I think needs to be resolved so far are three things. One is, we've already given $25,000 to the fire company. That already went to town meeting. It did come out of the general fund. And I will be transferring it out of the ARPA account into the general fund, so essentially paying the general fund back by the end of June. I recommend that the Board of Selectmen ask or require the fire company to provide copies of paid invoices that support this disbursement, again, so that our records are complete. So that's one issue that needs to be acted on, I think. And in the case of the crier, ambulance, and soup kitchen requests, I recommend that these requests be taken to a town meeting, and that all three are outside of our general governmental services, and that we require paid invoices proving appropriate use prior to dispersing funds. And then finally, and this might be really what the assignment was, which is the process for future requests, I recommend that the remaining ARPA funds be used only for general governmental services, ideally for capital needs. Otherwise, the town needs to develop a more formal application, evaluation, and town approval process.
Very well done, Gina. One question, your second, under your to be resolved recommendations.
Yes.
The second one for the crier, the KA, and the soup kitchen request. And
Yes.
Recommending that these requests be done. You also above recommended that we get the written narrative on each. So I would collapse the top paragraph on that page into your, right? So that we get the written narrative describing.
For those
each.
three?
Yeah. Along with taking it to the meeting.
And I mean, this is a decision for the board, and these are my recommendations, so we can.
I have a question, Gina. I don't know how to ask this question, or I'll try, but in your second paragraph here, where it describes how non-entitlement units are to spend ARPA funds, where it specifically says for general governmental services. Are we in violation to that now by?
I don't believe so, because I think by electing the standard allowance, it's hard to say, because we're treading, it's new ground, but we elect the standard allowance. We say we're going to use it for general governmental services. And then by choosing that, they're promising streamlined reporting, which I'm assuming means they're not gonna ask for the kind of detail that I think we should have.
But their assumption could be if it's being used for general governmental services,
right,
that reporting process is already in place by virtue of how we manage financials. And it's consistent from town to town. I'm just saying that the accounting and auditing systems are already in place. If it's done for general governmental services.
Yes, correct, yes.
So between the two of you, are you suggesting then for these other three, because they don't fall squarely within the general government services, that it could require a whole different reporting for
I'm
every
hoping
dollar?
not. I don't know for sure, but I'm hoping
I'm
not.
asking whether it's permitted at all. I'm
Well,
not
it
the expert,
depends,
I'm just
yeah.
reading the language here, that's.
Yeah,
So formerly elected the flat standard allowance. I think the people who would know more about this are the Economic Recovery Committee, who have also
No,
looked at the
well,
ARPA.
I don't think so. I can, maybe they would be, but I can go back I can go back into my resources. There's a CCM document. There's, the OPM keeps pointing the finger to the Treasury, but, I can investigate that a little bit further.
Well, if anything, it may change the reporting requirements for those three items.
Yeah, but it better
Well,
not change the
no,
reporting
no.
requirements for everything, because
Yeah.
then we're in the soup.
The way that I'm reading it is, if we change it, if it changes the reporting requirements, it's gonna change it for the entire set, all of the expenditures. It's
Yeah.
not gonna be reporting for these three items, it's gonna be the reporting for everything, and what does that involve?
All right, well, I will have to research that particular question further.
So in the meantime, do we wanna ask the ERC to provide the written narratives that they received?
They, actually, I think they have that available they may have it on their website. I gotta double check.
Yeah, and
They
I have a
meet-
one-page document, a letter that came from, I don't know if there's anything more, but we have a one-page letter from Shoreline Soup Kitchens.
I think the ERC meets Wednesday. And I think they also received a recommendation from the Ambulance Association.
They must,
Yeah.
it's a pretty specific number, down to
Yeah.
11
No,
cents.
we got a quote on all the different things we submitted, but I guess I'd ask as well, if Lou's point is satisfactorily addressed, in other words, it is permissible to pay money to other ones. I don't know why, because we had a number of things, other things on our list, including AEDs, to replace the AEDs around town that we paid for originally, things like that. But part of what Gina just said was all future money would only be for governmental purposes. And if it's permissible to do it for broader ones, I don't know why we cut it off with the first wave from the economic recovery.
I don't know,
Can you-
I'm not sure, what was that last sentence?
I
So-
don't think I
so-
understand what you said.
What I heard you say was that future monies you would limit to just governmental. And
From the chair that I'm sitting in, yes.
economic recovery has a number of requests. I don't know, I wasn't a part of the meeting, but I would want to hear from them first in terms of what requests do they have and what's their reaction to them. Because if there are other ones from non-governmental entities that they think are very, very valid uses of the money, and Lou's question is satisfactorily resolved so that we can give it to them, I don't know why we're hoarding all the money for governmental purposes.
Right, when there's
Especially when we just had a $750,000 surplus.
One of the
think we're
reasons is
hoarding
I think
anything.
we wanna be careful to make sure that as many people can benefit from the funds as possible. I think that's another reason why they said, okay, all you non-entitlement units, we're not gonna torture you with quarterly reporting and all kinds of other hoops to jump through. Just make sure you figure out a way that everybody can benefit from it. And one of the easiest way to do that is to just apply it against your, you wouldn't wanna do operating, cause it would create a sort of a dip, but you certainly
these-
could do it against your capital.
But if you'll recall, Christine Goupil was even saying in Clinton that they were taking applications.
But that's,
So that's, that's also, these applications, people are saying, hey, my business did not.
That's what got West Haven in
yeah, but that's a whole
got
other
other towns
level
in trouble,
of,
yeah.
you know, you're gonna ask for all, you'd have to ask for all kinds of financials, and someone has to sit back and make a judgment about which one is more deserving.
Right, but that's
they've
what you mentioned,
they've already
right?
gone through their whole study process, right? They've cut off input requests.
Who they?
Economic Recovery Committee
It's
that
a
you guys
two-year
appointed.
process, no, it's a two-year
think so.
ongoing
Well,
process.
there's more money coming in, but I was told, at the time we submitted it, that they
No,
were
that's-
cutting off.
No, I don't think so. I think because when, it's a two-year process, so
And
there's
then they're getting a whole
ongoing
nother
money.
grant.
Yeah,
Right.
so,
Yeah.
yeah, no, as things come in, they can roll them to us at any time.
So this report that you've given us,
What I
Gina,
did was I modeled it after the capital exhibit, and you're looking at 2 years, because the year we're in is actually the second year of the ARPA money, because we got it last June. And so I'm showing, what I think was assigned, those, the fire company shortfall, the crier, the ambulance, the soup kitchen. I'm showing the money going out, the $25,000 going out and going into the general fund, and then you've got a balance, and the boxed off one that says the assigned fund balance is interest and remaining sort of unassigned, revenue. And that same year end will pick up as the opening balance for next year.
Right,
I got an extra zero there.
Yeah, so the one, that goes down here and, yeah.
Yeah, so assuming I got all that right, but that was my idea. And the auditors have not seen this, but behind this will be supporting documentation where I will be able to say, what exactly, how exactly, let's say, for example, the ambulance is $68,864, maybe it's 1 invoices, maybe it's 2 invoices, but I'll have that detail.
Okay.
And this is, you know, I suppose you could argue I've had a year to think about it, but I really didn't start thinking about it until you gave me the assignment. So, yeah, because we went through a period of nothing was moving, we weren't spending any money, so. So now my assignment is to go back and get some clarification and make sure that if by electing this standard allowance, are we still permitted to give funds to some agencies who are not typically recipients of our
We also
tax money.
need to know how that money is gonna be, where does it show? It's not gonna show up on our, it's showing up here, but it's not gonna show up as a line item on our regular budget.
No, that's the other thing,
what
is
this
that you
is,
wanna
right?
keep it out of the operating,
Right.
because you don't wanna affect mill rate.
So the shortfall is in our
It
operating.
is right
budget.
now, and there'll be a journal entry to make it so it doesn't look like an over expenditure on that
Okay.
line.
Okay, thank you.
No, thank you, good work on this, and
Yeah.
we'll sort out those reporting plans. All right, I move to add an agenda item, opening of RFPs to this meeting. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, so we have sports, which one is this? Okay, this is proposal for, I've got one proposal for sports turf maintenance services, Irene Sheldon, Rocco Reel, and Beth Key. Of course.
I didn't make forms for this, because there's one bid, only one bid for each one.
Yeah, we only have one for each.
Well, that makes it easy, doesn't it?
All right, so Langer Contractors LLC, the bid amount from November 2022 through June 30th, 2023, $14,880. And then the total price, July 1, 2023 through June 30th, 2024, $15,880. And they also quoted separately for services, do you need to?
Sort of like change order add-ons.
Add-ons, okay, so fertilization of fields, liming of the fields, grub controls, turn over the infield. I don't know, do we have to write all of these into this?
No, well, yeah, I think I'll include them, but.
Okay, so I'll show you the details, yeah.
Yeah, don't we generally just read the amount, and then we look for a recommendation for whoever?
We send it to Park and Rec.
Yeah, and then they would come back with a recommendation for online.
Yep.
Yeah, there's an awful lot of.
Yeah, there's,
parts.
yeah, quite a bit. I don't wanna read that into.
Right. Grub control lime, I don't know what any of that is, so I'm gonna trust them
Yeah,
to
it's
look
new
at
though,
it.
they didn't used to break that, they didn't pull that out in the past, that's new.
And this is a proposal for Eric Our Memorial Park.
Which I've seen a lot more activity at recently. I hadn't for years, and now there's a lot of little kids out there. It's nice to
Okay, July 1st, 2023, or 2022 through June 30th, 2023, $3,430. Oh, I'm sorry, this is Drainscapes LLC. And then July 1st, 2023 through June 30th, 2024, $24,133.
What was the first number, Nancy?
23,430. And similarly,
So there was a reduction?
no,
First year. and
Went up
second year.
about
first year, and it goes up
600.
23,430 for
23,430, okay.
to 24,133. And they too have the à la carte. Okay. And then
So that one
lastly,
goes to Park and Rec too.
this is for the Union District Cemetery.
You wanna move to send those two to Park and Rec?
I'll move to send those two to Park and Rec.
I'll second.
'Cause this one, other one is separate, it's different.
Aye.
Aye.
This one's a challenge.
I think she said aye.
I did say aye.
Okay.
I'm going. There we go.
It was a groan, but
Yeah.
I took it as an aye.
Yeah.
This one is the.
Hopefully this opens
Oh,
easier
wait,
than the other
there's
one.
more.
They're doing everything they're supposed
Just like
to.
the Oscars.
I was gonna say, that almost feels like those little balls that
And
get
the winner
smaller and the
is-
other
Oh, yeah.
carbon things.
All right, this is from MCC LLC, Monument Conservation Cooperative LLC. The bid amount, they will restore 35 grave stones for a total budget of $20,000. This is specialty work, so,
Yes.
Is this the company that Tom Lentz worked with before?
yeah.
Do you wanna send this to John?
I move to send this to the town historian, Tom Lentz.
I'll second.
Aye.
Aye.
Can I move to add something on? Are you done with the RFs?
I'm done with RFPs.
Can, I add youth and family services, just to discuss for a minute? I don't have anything planned, but I saw the message coming out.
I'll second.
I'm sorry, thank you.
Yep.
Wait, hold on.
So I don't know if you both saw the email that came out from Youth and Family Services. They're discontinuing some providing counseling
Yes.
because they don't have the funds
Correct.
to do that. So I don't know what we can do, but we should do something. And we have money, we have ARPA money. I don't know what the needs are and if it's something that we can do. Should we call them in and see if there's something? I mean, I know Adam has part of this, we're only part of it, but that's what the money is for, counseling families in need. And this is, counseling is a big issue post-COVID around the nation. We're hearing, and we've had several suicides of kids in the school system. So I'm worried. I don't know what their issues are. I just read the letter briefly and I saw that there was a financial issue that is leading to them not providing counseling. So I don't.
I read that as well, so I don't know what the challenges are as well.
But we have resources. We have resources in ARPA funds. That's what it's for.
I
So
think
to
before
me,
we go to the fix,
right.
I think
We
we
need to
need to
bring 'em
know
in.
what's going on.
So how do we do that?
Well, I can invite them to the June 13th meeting.
I won't be able to be here. So if you want to do that, or if we can do a special meeting before that. My schedule is crazy though going in, so I don't, can I?
I think I'll put them on the June 13th agenda,
Okay.
if you don't mind.
No, that's
Let's
fine.
just find out what's going on,
Okay,
and then we can decide how best to
Okay.
help if we
Thank you.
can.
thank you.
I do agree, I read the note and it just sort of struck me like
It was
sort of
odd.
left us in a vacuum.
It did, and it almost, at one point I thought, well, maybe is it a resourcing issue versus a monetary issue?
Well, they didn't plead, they didn't say, can we meet, can we get more funds? They didn't ask for it, so they might not know to do that,
But Board of Finance explicitly asked them several times, do you need more money? And they said, no.
I asked at our meeting, do you need it, I think I asked the
They
same
said
question.
No.
The same way I asked Walter, but Walter came back to I asked Walter, are you sure? Because there's a cost of stuff, and he said, nope, we're fine, and they're here. So I think people, no one expected the impact of.
It's a resource issue. They're having a hard day. There's nobody out there willing to work for what
That's the way I was reading it between the
Yeah,
lines
yeah,
like it
that's
was
what
in
I talked
personnel.
about. That's what it
Yeah.
is.
I thought it was resource, yeah.
But
It's
I
not
think it's worth,
financial
it may not
resources.
be.
It's human
It may be
resources.
human,
It
but
is
I
human
think it's
resources.
worth looking into, so I think to make sure that we're providing services to our community, that's an important one. Especially at a time when we're seeing suicides and the increase in family needs and funding decrease, it's just something that, you know, if there's something that we can do as a town. So, I won't be able to be at that meeting, but I appreciate your doing that, thank you.
I'm gonna be going to the board meeting, so I can report back, what I'm hearing. I've already had a couple of conversations with the directors, so I could report back, to you guys.
That would be
once I get
great,
a little
Annie.
more information.
Thank you. Are you on the board?
No, but I might be going on the board, so.
Okay.
Selectmen's comments.
Yeah, I have a couple. The first one, I want to circle back to this affordable housing plan, and I would just want to be clear what our expectation is. My expectation is that we conditionally approve that plan, and that the committee or CCM, who's ever publishing that report,
Rivercog, yep.
revises that report. And it's important because I don't want to see that report
Without that
without it,
introduction.
with it being published somewhere. So I just want to make sure that is what we expect.
Yep, that's my expectation.
So are we gonna follow up as a board with Mr. Hogarty to make sure that they, or the person from the Rivercog to make sure they provide us an updated one, like in this week? So we have it, since we have to put it.
I can take that action.
I think we need to, and the reason I'm emphasizing this is I had this conversation before, and what I was told was, you, the board of selectmen, can decide to do whatever you want with it. I don't think, I'm not there. I'm expecting them to publish the final report as we acted upon it tonight.
Okay.
All right, and if there's a misunderstanding of that, then I think we need to circle back.
And that's just the inclusion of your meeting.
Yeah, I
And
believe.
the inclusion of the appendices.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that we have to do with the housing authority other than vote on it at the town meeting? By June 1st, we had to do something. Is that what we did tonight?
That's what we did.
We
yes.
don't have to do anything with the town meeting? Nothing?
Well, we have to submit it to OPM. I don't want to submit it to OPM unless all of this is.
Resolved. By June 1st, it has to be submitted. Okay. All right.
My question is, what's the intended next step after this gets approved through the
Then it becomes a planning and zoning tool.
OPM? Okay, then planning and zoning expected to put a deadline for you to do certain things? Because they were saying that every 5 years it comes up. I mean, we could go into infinitum. but-
Yeah, although unfortunately, we're in selectmen's comments. Point taken. I'll get an answer to you.
It's just near and dear to me. My brother just came from Russia. And he's been going around he just escaped from Russia. And he's been trying to find housing. 5 to 8 year wait for affordable housing. It's tough.
Appreciate that. Jamie, comments?
I had a few more.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry for interrupting.
What's your name?
David Long.
Oh, is there any update on the status for Deer Lake?
No,
Nothing.
they're still collecting monies.
They who?
Pathfinders. That's
Okay.
it.
I have one other comment, and it has to do with this, the ARPA spending requirement. And I do want to certainly thank Gina. I had given this some thought myself, and I think that she touched on almost all of these. But one of the things that I think that I would ask the Economic Recovery Committee to consider is pre-establishing a list of criteria for project selection. It seems to me that some thought should be put into that up front, as opposed to sort of coming in with a blank sheet of paper. And I suppose that the two options could still be considered, but it just seems to me that some upfront thought that thinks about, you know, some of the points about the greatest people benefiting, project investments provides long-term service. In other words, it's greater than a one-year infusion of funding. Things like that, but looking for some sort of established criteria ahead of time in which to gauge an application. I think that there should be a formal application process. In other words, there's actually a structured document that includes project descriptions, project justifications against the criteria for ARPA funding, which I had that on my list, but Gina touched on it in her report as well. A detailed breakdown of all costs associated with the project, and it should include not only the immediate costs, but any ongoing long-term financial obligations such as maintenance, staffing, licensing, things like that. Again, I think, Gina, you kind of touched on that in your report as well. I had financial need here, but you did a way better job than I did. Spending and auditing project, the same thing. Anyway, the last one I had was the approval process, which is already in place. But I would ask the committee to give that some thought. That's it.
That's it? I have a few. So remember that payment the town received for DIPS a couple of months ago? DIPS. Actually, the payments are part of the state's new environmental stewardship program, the nickel per NIP program. Just as an FYI, we have to, by law, use the revenue for an environmental purpose. So we either have to plant a tree, something to that, just a heads
Is
up.
it a dollar for dollar? And because I'm not sure how this money will dribble in, because we've got two checks. One was nothing. It was, over $1,000, I think.
Yeah.
And the other one was nothing. It was tiny little checks.
I know.
From two different places.
Does it have to be for new projects, or can it be something that, so can we use it to pay for the tree warden? Because they're taking care of trees, that's environmental, getting them environmental hazard
Well,
offset, because we've seen an increase there, he's expecting an increase, that might be.
We'll just
I
justify
had
some.
seen that as well, Nancy, and I'm glad you raised it. I think the money should be set aside, and when there's some sort of it's not a lot of money, but set it aside for some sort of community activity like an Earth Day program, or Boy Scout composting, something like that.
It all comes back to that, doesn't it?
And that should be the town's contribution to that volunteerism, and I think we should encourage that to happen.
And the only reason I raise it, because we did get that monies in, but I thought, well, we should probably make sure we abide by law.
If there are some, I can research it a little bit further, but if there are some restrictions about, how do we figure out what to expect, and does it have to be used by a certain period of time?
Yeah.
Where's the source?
Because we might only have,
The Connecticut Beverage Association.
They, instead of putting the nickel deposit on the bottles, it's a direct refund.
Because they can't recycle
Because
them.
they can't.
But who is overseeing how much they're supposed to cough up and how it gets divvied out to the towns? And this check just showed up with nothing to go with.
Because it gets charged by the merchants, who then report that to the state.
Distributor.
They report it to the state.
These checks come from these checks came from two different places. There were two different liquor distributors, I think. I don't know.
So we're not drinking enough if they're that little.
Well, I was at the Mutis Sportsman's Dinner, and there was a lot of nips around there too.
I see a new spreadsheet in my picture.
There's plenty of them on the streets in Killingworth.
The key is they gotta be bought in Killingworth, though.
Yeah.
All right, moving on. In response to public comment on May 9th, the BOS does not set the veterans tax exemption. There was public comment about how low that is. It is governed by state statute, 1281-19 and 1262G. The latter requires the state mandated veterans exemption to be increased in the year of a revaluation, but only if the reevaluation results in a grand list increase. There is no exemption increase if a town's factor is less than 1.5 calculated blah, 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 blah. I got a lot of content here, but essentially, our grand list did not increase by 50%. Consequently, there's no change in the veterans exemption.
50%, it has to change by 50%, it has to double?
Can you imagine?
Yeah.
From the year before or from a date certain?
You'd have to look into the statute, but I.
Grand list,
So
so
here's
it'd
what
be higher
I'd like to
fail. I
suggest,
would
Nancy,
think.
is that may be what we can do at this level. But I think it's a worthy cause that we should raise to the state level. And say, look, this was brought up at a town meeting. It seems like it has some merit. We can't do anything about it, but you can.
Was the
Yeah.
comment accurate? Because it was a minuscule amount of
I'm
abatement.
assuming
I
it
don't-
was, but.
So I'll take it up to the state and see what they have to say.
Thank you.
The state is in the process of upgrading the current DSL connection to a fiber line for the voter registration application that both the registrar and the town clerks use. So Frontier and CT Comp are working on that. A couple of other things. I continue to hear Frontier and CT Comp. And you'll have my notes. I continue to hear from concerned residents about speeding. Most recent complaints have been on Rosemead Hill and Route 81. It's a constant process, and there's really very little that we can. One woman asked me whether we could put a speed bump down here on Rosemead, right at the corner of Wolf Hollow Lane. Unfortunately, that just. Somebody even asked for a speed bump on 81 coming out of Chittenden.
That's great. I like this.
Middletown has it figured
I was
out.
gonna say, those are
They just let their
Priuses.
roads get so beat up that it's too risky.
Well, there you go. Just an FYI, we received another $135,000 in FEMA funding from Isais. So I will say Walt does a tremendous job with this paperwork. Gets that paperwork in and gets reimbursed for what we use, our resources. And three more things. The town is participating in the Governor's Emergency Planning and Preparedness Initiative tomorrow. We have a hurricane planning activity. The Board of Finance reduced the mill rate by 3.5 mil. Our new mill rate is 23.22. And I don't know, Lou and Jamie, if you're around Thursday at 1 o'clock, we're gonna do an employee picnic. I'm buying hot dogs and hamburgers and we're gonna grill.
Nips?
No nips. It's gonna be a nipless barbecue.
Thank you very much.
All right, thanks everyone. Motion to adjourn?